Welcome back to Maximum Production, a Holstein Friesian New Zealand podcast about everything to do with cows. I'm Amelia, and today I am talking about registrations and the benefits to registering your animals with a breed society here in New Zealand. So joining me today is Alex Harvey of Crossroads Holsteins in Northland. Alex is a past member of our HFNZ board and has been registering his herd for many years. So thank you for joining me today, Alex.
Not a problem.
So, Alex, do you want to give us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
When we started milking for Dad had a few Holstein Friesians, about half a dozen in his grade herd. The grade herd can be dated back to about 1940. So it's an old grade herd that we've since graded up using the old SR system when it was old SRA, SRB, SRC, SRD. Now it's since been changed to the new system.
The SO, the S1, the S2, the S3.
Yes. So we graded up. In those days, we were having to get a inspector to come and inspect every animal that we wanted to SR. So every animal we wanted to put up, we'd start with cows that had multiple daughters in the herd. So you start with your oldest cows first, SR her, and then all her daughters automatically become SR, S1F, S12F, S3F. So you start with the SOFs, and then all the later generations automatically grade up, and that's how we did it. So our herd, I think now is only half a dozen S3Fs, and all the rest are full pedigrees, all from a grade herd.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. And by the way, I love Alex's herd. Alex has red Holsteins, so it's always great wandering through Alex's herd and seeing a little bit of the different colours there as well, which is nice.
They are a later addition. Well, we've had red genes in the herd from day one, but we've only started breeding the red ones for the last 15 years. So, they're a late addition compared to the black and white ones.
Cool. And so, as I mentioned before, your stud prefix is Crossroads. How did you come up with that?
That was Dad's stud name. Where he was at Warkworth when we were farming at Warkworth was on the corner of State Highway 1 and the Satellite Station Road, hence Crossroads. It was always at the Crossroads. We farmed both sides of the Satellite Station Road and both sides of State Highway 1.
Oh, wow.
In those days, we used to walk the cows across State Highway 1. And when we left in 1980, we were down to only 3 days a week where you could walk across the road because the road got too busy. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday was always too busy. But earlier on, it never used to be that busy. But that's just the increased traffic flows that we noticed way back then. So hence where the Crossroads stud came from.
You definitely wouldn't be able to do that now. You definitely have to have an underpass in place.
No.
So you've been registering for quite a while then?
Yeah. We're since 1982 when we took over the herd. Nada and I took over the herd from Mum and Dad. We've gone through a policy of registering everything, all the calves, every year. And now we're 100% full pedigree, fully registered, fully recorded.
And you don't just register your female animals, do you? You register all your male animals that are potential sires as well?
We register the male animals that we're keeping for ourselves, and with the bulls' calves that are sold to a bull rearer, but we identify them all at birth, so we can go back into the bull rearer's herd of bulls and actually sell bulls out to the industry because they're all fully identified.
Wow, that's really good.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
So the records are all still there. So she can say, well, is this number 5 any good to use as a bull for tailing herds with? And we can have a look, and yes, number 5's fine, and they can just sell them out. She's got quite a market where she sells them out afterwards, after they're reared and weaned and up to, as yearlings, a year, 18 months old.
So I just want to emphasize to our listeners today that the rules and stuff that we're talking about in regards to registration today only apply to the New Zealand Holstein Friesian Association. All the breed societies in New Zealand have their own rules. So the benefits that you see from registration are the same regardless of what breed you are registering with, but the rules as to how you register differ between Holstein Friesian and Jersey and Ayrshire and Shorthorn, Guernseys and Brown Swiss, everything like that. So, and I'm not going to try and get into them because they all confuse me. I think Holstein Friesian's really easy to understand, but I have definitely had discussions with people about the Ayrshire one before, and it sometimes baffles me. So I'm not going to get into the depth, and Alex and I are going to stay out of that. Alex is a Holstein breeder, so I think we're going to stick with the black and whites and his red and whites today. I think that's our safe place to go, don't you think, Alex?
Yeah, I haven't got any other breed. We don't have Ayrshires, we don't have Jerseys, we don't have Shorthorns, we don't have anything. We have Holsteins, we're a Holstein stud. We have red and whites and black and whites, and that's it. Finish.
Fair enough. That's what you like, so...
Yeah.
So why did you start registering? What did you see as your benefits behind registering up your herd?
Future sales, the pedigree sales have always been in excess of grade sales for either be calves or bulls, or more the fact that they were in the purity of the bloodlines, not into the crossbreds. You're better off staying pure. It just gives you that focus, and knowing they're registered, you can go back and check them all to see how much, if there's any Jersey in their background or anything like that.
And you've had some success over the years as well with bulls. You have a very recent bull that's gone in. He was a graduate from our genetic leaders program a couple of years ago, Octave. And so you did see the benefit of those bulls going into AB companies as well?
Yeah, we were very surprised he got picked up, but he's come through very, very well. Probably more the fact that he's a little bit of an outcross, and we've always strived to be a bit of an outcross herd. We haven't gone with a lot of the mainstream genetics. If there's something a little bit different, we're more than likely to use it versus using just the bull of the day or the mainstream bulls, which are the flavour that everybody tends to use a lot of the time. The very popular bulls, sometimes we'll use them, sometimes we won't. And it will depend on my criteria for how they stack up in my criteria of how I select bulls, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, so you don't use a lot of New Zealand genetics, do you? You use a lot of overseas. It's because there's not a lot of red genetics in New Zealand. So to bring that in, you do have to use a bit more overseas.
With regard to the overseas bulls versus New Zealand bulls, I would have used more New Zealand bulls if they'd stacked up, being full pedigree, because now that we're up to full pedigree, I won't use S1F or S2Fs. I tend to say that I'm full pedigree now, I want an S3F or above bull. So that cuts a lot of the grade bulls out that I won't consider. And our other traits are so much higher than what the average cow is in New Zealand that if I start using 0.9, 0.1, 1.1 other bulls, I'm going backwards. So it was a case of we had to go overseas to get the genetics that we required.
To meet your breeding objectives, it makes sense. You don't really want to sacrifice an improvement in the herd that you're looking for. So that's understandable. I think also, just to explain a little bit more, you said like those lower supplementary bulls. I think it's quite important for our listeners to understand how the registration status of your bull affects the registration status of your progeny. So it's if you have a S3F dam and then you choose a S1F or an S2F bull, it is going to drop the status of your progeny down to an S1F or whatever the bull is. So the only way for your progeny to go up in a status is if the bull is a higher status than the dam, or if the dam is already a full pedigree, then it can move up one status from where the bull is. But and Alex can correct me if I'm wrong, that's perfectly fine. So it is important that you are picking the bulls that are going to improve the status of your registration as well as improve your herd. The majority of bulls that are coming out in New Zealand that are in your bull catalogues are only an S1F because they're not necessarily out of a registered herd. We have just been able to record recover them to an S1F status, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
And with that status as it is, yeah, you're completely correct. The background of the dam's not there.
Yeah.
And that shows in the S1F and the S2F, the generations behind it. With a full pedigree, we can go back 5-6 generations and have a look at those dams and bulls back, whereas the S1Fs and S2Fs, we can't. A lot of that information's not there.
I think now, like, depending on how good people's records are, they might be. But you think about when you first started doing this 30, 40 years ago, an inspector was coming out and having a look at these animals for you. And didn't they take photos? So you had to have like a photo that went with the registration certificate?
All calves in those days had to be photographed and their birth ID written underneath between the legs on the photographs. And that's how the calves were registered. And the original SRA cows, yes.
Yeah, so back then we could see the physical animal and we could kind of tell where it is a little bit better. But it's also important now that people are registering animals that maybe don't have that background behind them as much. And so the look of the animal might not necessarily look as Frisian now if we've got a bit of crossbred family behind it. And that's why it's only being registered as that S1F or an SOF rather than a higher status if you look back at the family.
Yeah, and you'll find a lot of traditional breeders won't tend to use those not properly marked bulls, for want of a better word.
What we would call off colour.
Yeah, what we would call off colour, for the fact that they want to stay traditional and want to stay in the mainstream or in their full pedigree status.
And it was something that when export animals were a thing in New Zealand, which was only a couple of years ago, they were rejected even if they were F16 and they didn't meet those requirements.
Colour markings.
Yeah, so the colour markings that we're talking about is the 4 white socks and the white switch of the tail.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with the star on the head or anything like that. There's a lot of confusion out there about that. When we say white feet, it means that they're white around the top of the hoof must be unbroken.
No, there must be, now let me get this straight. The white must encircle the leg below the knee and touching the hoof. So you can have a black spot that touches the hoof that comes up the leg, so long as it doesn't go above the knee, and the white is below the knee and it encircles the leg below the knee and touches the hoof.
Okay,
Fine.
all right. I know the white switch thing is definitely, if it's got any black in the long section of the tail, then it's classed as OC.
Yes, yes.
This is why I have you on here, Alex, to correct me when I'm wrong. So we've talked a lot about the supplementary registrations and things like that. I guess another thing to clarify is what kind of an animal can you register as a Holstein Friesian?
You can pretty much register anything that's by a Frisian sire, can't you? I'm not dead sure on the actual status on what the association is for.
The current rules that we have now, as you said, they have to be by a Holstein Friesian sire, yes. They still need to meet F8. So what I mean by F8 is every cattle represented in New Zealand is measured on a 16th breed status. If we say it must be F8, it means that it must be 8/16 or at least half Friesian. Because it must be by a Holstein Friesian sire, your Holstein Friesian sire must be at least F14 to be eligible to be registered. So it needs to have at least 1 part Friesian from the dam, and then it can pull over 7 from the sire to make it that F8. But the sire does need to be registered or registerable.
Yeah.
And so to kind of move its way through, there's a really great, if you go to the Holstein Friesian website and go to the registration page, there's this little Punnett square that tells you the status of the dam down one side and the status of the side. I know people can't see my hand movements, but Alex can. He gets what I mean. So it kind of works out what, like if it's an F14 sire and a F12 dam, that's registered as S1 and the sire is registered as S2, what that's going to mean and what the progeny is likely to be registered as. That little Punnett square is really good for if you're getting into registering animals, or you're starting off to look at registering animals to kind of figure out what they're going to look like on a pedigree and things like that.
Just remembering that the more pure the progeny is, whether it be bulls or heifers, especially in bulls, the more saleable the bulls are as calves. And heading into this area where everything's got to be sold and have a market value, Fonterra says that everything's got to have a market value. Well, the Frisian bull calf is far superior than anything else, and it's a byproduct from your heifers, unless you're using a lot of sex semen. So the Frisian bull calf certainly has its part to play.
The bonus of having a dual purpose breed.
It is, definitely.
And there is a lot of buyers out there for Holstein Friesian bulls, and even extra Holstein Friesian or F16 heifers as well sell quite well. But I guess if we go back to, you talked about right at the start, the sales side of it. Alex has not sold his herd. He is still happily milking. Well, I wouldn't say happily at the moment. Alex is in a moon boot, so he's a little bit worse for wear at the moment, but he's still milking his herd and he hasn't had any big sales, well, since I've been working with the association. But you talked about the benefits of those sales. We have seen a lot in the last couple of years that have got incredible benefits out of registered stock. Do you want to just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, the registered stock is always a big market for elite genetics in New Zealand. You bring in elite genetics in and do the ET programs and get a lot of heifers on the ground. And it has always been, even when we were buying heifers and calves when we were building the herd up, we've had a closed herd for 10 years or more, so we haven't actually bought anything new for quite some time. But that was our choice, and when everything fell over earlier on with the Imbovis, we were just closed up completely, so we actually don't buy anything in at all, not even breeding bulls. We put collars on the herd and just did total AI, and no bulls used apart from our own bulls and with the heifers. But going back to the genetics for the sale, there's always been genetic sales from a lot of the top breeders. In the old days, there used to be a lot of dispersal sales, and they were always made a lot more money than what the grade herd was that was just sold through the stock agent on a herd basis. One of the reasons we just carried on doing what we were doing, and we enjoyed it. We enjoyed the camaraderie with the breeders and other like-minded people, and that has a lot to do with it.
So off the top of my head, we had, not last year, the year before, we had quite a few of our breeders sell up. It just happened to be the year of it. And so Rivendell stud sold out. That's Owen and Kathy Copinger. I think he averaged over 3 for his in-milks.
Don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Something like that. Wendy Harker sold her herd, which was a mixture of milking Shorthorns, Holsteins, and a couple of Jerseys thrown in there, one Ayrshire. She had some great animals, so she split it over 2 days and did one that was mainly just her Holsteins and then one that was just her grades. And it was quite evident that the day that was her Holsteins sold for, I know that she averaged over, I think it was like 3-4 for her Holsteins, and then I think she averaged just on 3 for the rest, and that was split over 2 days. Fermoy, I think, averaged 3-7 or 3-6. Please don't quote me on any of these. These are just off the top of my head. Busybrook.
Yeah, Busybrook.
Yeah, so Nathan Bain, who him and his wife Amanda run the Busybrook stud in Duntroon, just outside of Oamaru, and he held a sale at the start of this year where the highest selling animal went for $63,000 New Zealand.
Yeah.
The animal was actually in Australia and it sold to an Australian guy. So you convert that to Australian dollars and it's a few more. But he had easily averages an incredible amount every single time. But 90% of the animals that come out of those sales are full pedigree, or they have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dams behind them that are all completely registered. And he meets all aspects of anyone that's in that breeding, because he's got New Zealand genetics, he's got overseas genetics, he mixes it all in together. I think everyone would know the Busybrook name from the amount of bulls that go through the AB companies in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So, he's got a very high BW herd. So I think there's a lot that people can get. There's one in front of me at the moment, Busybrook BE Imply S2F, which has a BW of 657 and is the second highest protein bull currently on the AE list of 73 protein BV.
It must be genomic list.
He's proven.
Oh, he's proven, is he?
Yeah, he's a proven bull. Sorry, that was just in front of me. But, Nathan's worked his butt off in the nicest way possible to develop this stud and this name for himself, and to be able to sell animals at such an elite level in New Zealand is crazy. I know Nathan's really proud of the work that he does, and I think he has a good stake within the New Zealand industry. So, yeah, having sales like his, and everyone buys from them. It's not just these elite pedigree guys that are buying these animals, because everyone knows that they're getting good genetics.
And that's where you're having your full registrations and all your registrations and registering all the heifers going forward. That's where you can aim for. Everyone can do it if they wanted to. They only got to put your mind to it and do the work, do the hard yards in the bottom, and it's achievable for everybody.
And actually, from a farmer's end, we've got some really great people in our office, and they do all the hard work for you. As long as you've put all your records in correctly, you just have to tell us what you want registered, and we do it. We will name it for you if that's what you want.
I've heard that. We haven't done that. We do all our own. My wife does all that. She goes through and takes all the names off from all the cows that were culled in the last couple of years, and then renames them, uses them back again, and uses the baby books to name all the heifers.
I think every single pedigree dairy farmer has a baby book that sits in their office. I know Dad did when we were little. We named ours very differently when we were younger, growing up. When we were registering the Ayrshires, Dad didn't name them after their dams. They were named, each year had a letter. So we started at A and worked our way through. Dad always said the Q, the V, the X, the Y, and the Z were really hard years, but it was his way of knowing. He could look at an animal and see its name and know what year it was born and how old it was and things like that. We also carried it on with all our pets, but that always made it really hard. I always remember Dad, when he used to write, he still does it now for my brother, writes everything down on paper. So he had his baby book out and he was writing it all down and then flicking through. And now we in the office sit with it. We all have them on the tabs on our computer, so that when we're doing naming, you just have a baby book, baby name list open, and you naming cows through that. Some people think we're a little bit weird when they won't come into our office and we just have names out there, or if we're having random discussions and we're like, I need a name for a bull and it's got to start with this letter. This is the dam's name. Give me something exciting.
Yeah. Can be interesting some days.
Tony O'Connor always comes out with some weird names. I don't know what baby book he's using, but there are some weird names that come out when he's naming them. And you can't change a name for Tony. Tony must change it himself. He's very particular.
Everyone for their own.
Yeah. I like it when you name your own animals, because then it saves us a job. But we're here. There is a fee attached to it, but we are here to help you do it, to make it easier for you. So I guess we possibly should talk about costs related to registration. I don't think off the top of your head you would know them.
No, that's your department, Amelia, not mine.
And I was meant to have this open before we started this discussion, but that's right. I can never remember off the top of my head.
All animals under 20 months of age, there's no charge to register animals?
Yep, that's correct. That's female animals.
It's female animals.
Yep, so all the female animals under 20 months of age are free to register with Holstein Friesian, correct?
Yes, so that means, just take that a little bit further, that if you register all your calves and then sell your surplus, they all go out as registered calves. And then it's up to the new owner to carry them on, but they all are registered with your stud name. That's something you look on the records going forward, and if you've sold animals out, even as calves, they all end up with your stud name on their herd test sheets if they herd test, and they pop up and all sorts of funny places where the stud names pop up on.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Sometimes when you go in to look at sire proving herds or something like that, and every now and then you'll go back in a dam, they'll be like, oh, this is who this animal is. So the dam is this one. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I know who that's, stud prefix is your way of identifying yourself because they are individual to each breeder. You can't have more than one breeder in New Zealand within Holstein Friesian that are using the same stud prefix. So they are very unique. People come up with some really weird ones. Alex is like my family where we're really stupid and we have really long ones, which make naming animals really hard when you're only allowed 30 characters. It's fine once they're full pedigrees, but when you think about it and you're moving through that status, ours is, so Lockhaven, which is our family stud prefix, it's 9 characters, and then you add on the space at the end of it. So that's 10 characters lost. So I have 20 characters left. And then if you've got a supplementary, that's 4 characters on the end. So I have 26 characters now to fill in a name, including the size name. You have to get quite creative.
Plus the S1F, plus the OC, plus the red.
Yes.
If they're red and white.
Yes.
So it does shorten the names up very quickly with the suffixes.
Yeah. And I think only up until, like 4 years ago, we changed it. Before that, you only had 25 characters.
I think you can only do 25 characters with the minder. When you name them on minder, you can only do 25 characters as well.
Yeah, but I think from a farmer's point of view, if you are naming them yourself, that's fine because you don't add on the ET or the suffix or the read. Well, it would be great if you did add on the read.
We do.
Yeah, I know you guys do, but if other people could, that'd be great. Because that gets added on automatically when they're registered, so you don't have to calculate that yourself. And so you've got those full 25 characters as the full naming of the animal, which is a bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you do have to add on read, it adds it a lot more. Okay, so our fees.
Yeah.
No charge for under 20 months of age as at the 1st of April each year for female animals. So female animals over 20 months of age, $8.80 per animal. These are subject to change on a yearly basis, and these prices are all including GST. Bulls under 24 months of age, you're looking at $31. Over 24 months of age, you're looking at $85. And then our naming service is $1.80. We do try to help out new members in that on the regular, where we offer a 50% discount if they're wanting to register up their whole herd. So we can calculate everything in your herd that's eligible to be registered, and we'll do it at a 50% discount if you'll then go on a standing order. And that's just to try and get your herd started, and then we can follow it through from there. So it is something that Sharon, our breed services manager, and myself, we do this a lot with any new members that we get that inquire at all about registration. And Sharon quite often just puts a few together every year and sends them out to people to see if they're interested in trying to register up their herd. I think it's also important for people to be aware that we charge a cow fee annually. So the cow fee is charged in August, and it is calculated on the number of registered females over 20 months of age as at the 1st of June, recorded on database at your location, and it's $3.40 per cow. That's how Holstein Friesian allows people to register their female animals under 20 months for free, is that once they get over, we charge a cow fee so that we can continue tracking it. And that also allows us to do a lot of the work that we do for you guys and not have to charge exuberant amounts for it as well. So it's just something that if you are looking at registering up your whole herd, that you're aware of that fee coming through every year, because sometimes it does throw people.
It is an annual fee, and it does come through every year.
Yeah. So that's the money side of things, but we don't have to dwell on the money side of things, I think.
There is a lot of benefits to it as well. So
yeah, there are. And I think when you talk to a lot of the breeders, they see it that the cost in the long term, it's a investment rather than a cost on your herd.
Definitely.
Yeah. So the reason why I say it that way is that you're not necessarily going to see the benefit after registering one cow. You've got to register over the years, like what Alex has done with his herd, to be able to get to that full registration status. So then when you do sell them in the future, that it can increase your price by $500 to $1,000 some places, or you're Nathan Bain, 60,000. But we're not all Nathan Bain. But it's being able to see that long-term benefit and see that investment.
I'd put it down that it's akin to using bull semen that are a bit higher priced or a bit better value than just the cheapest semen available. If you want to improve your herd, you use what you can afford. Well, registering your cows up is in the same boat. The more you register, the more it's going to improve. And the higher or the better the quality of semen you use, the better the herd is going to be on the other side of it. You don't see the benefit of good semen straight away. It's a long-term plan, if that makes sense to everybody.
It makes sense to me. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody else. But I think, and the other thing is when there's a long-term investment, but it's also a really easy way to track family lines in your herd.
Definitely. Yes, definitely.
It's a common thing in New Zealand that there's herds out there that every progeny gets named after the dam. So you have your Bella line. So it's always going to be slightly different because the sire will be slightly different, but you know that that's all one family. The Trinoko S family is where Sakoon comes from and those kind of things. That's all one family.
Tony's S family is a very big family. It's akin to our V family. I think we've got about 50, 60, 70 animals in the herd out of one family, and I think he's in the same boat.
Yeah, I know that that matriarch cow passed away last year.
Yeah.
But he's still got so many more in there that these all come from that all go back to her. And the same with the April cow and the Meander herd.
Yes.
And the Alibi bull and all that all go back to this April cow. And she is kind of their bull breeding family. So she's at the top, and then there's all the daughters and then all the sires. And so Robert's kept that the same, that it's bred through. And I guess the other thing is like these stud prefix. This is what creates the name for yourself. Like everyone knows Meander, everyone knows Trinoko, which goes back to Tony O'Connor. And Trinoko actually, just weird fact, is O'Connor T backwards. And his family stud was Ronoko, which was just O'Connor backwards. Busybrook, as I said, everyone knows who Busybrook is, Lightburn, Lawnlace. You know, these are all stud prefix that have developed a name for themselves within our industry, and you know who they are by that stud prefix. You might not know who they are personally, like their names, but you know that if you look in a bull catalogue and you see something that's Busybrook or you see something that's Meander or Lightburn, that you know where that family is coming from, you know that there's good history behind it and there's good genetics there. Same with the Myrie stud, Gauntlet, and those kind of bulls. That Gauntlet bull comes back from his G family. It does take time to be able to build that up, but being able to trace a family line back can be very important when you're looking at developing your herd in the long run.
It's very rewarding when you're milking the cows and when you can see families and see family resemblances going forward. You know, especially when you got the old cow and then all her daughters and granddaughters in the herd together. You pick up on it. It gives you an added interest.
They all have similar personalities, so that they'll all come in like one on, or they'll all be the first cow in the rows.
Or the last one that's the slug.
Well, yeah, they're not all going to be the fastest cow, Alex.
No.
So I just briefly want to touch on ET animals. Do you want to just explain a little bit about how registration with ET animals works in New Zealand?
I haven't done a lot of ET work. We're just a bit far away, and we've never had a lot of success doing ET work on our autumn cows in the autumn. They don't seem to fire up as well. We can put eggs into cows and get good hit rates, but actually flushing cows, we haven't had a good run with it.
You don't get the oocytes.
Yeah, we get plenty of oocytes, but they just don't become fertilised eggs.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I don't know what it is, but we've sort of given up on that side of it, and we just tend to use bulls and sex semen if we want to from there on. Registering ETs, they need to be DNA parentage verified to sire and dam for registering ETs. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right. Completely right.
Registering bulls are the same. They've got to be
to sire.
To sire.
Registering bulls need to be matched to sire and hold a profile. So DNA verification and a DNA profile are two different things. Now, if you test through GMARC, it automatically does both because it never used to. But they need to hold a profile so that in the future, if you've got this bull that you've kept. He hasn't gone into an AB company, but you've decided to use him. And then you're like, oh, I sold him to Alex and Alex used him and now he wants to register progeny out of him. He needs to have something to match it to. So he needs to have that profile so they can match it and make sure that they've got the genomic profile for if you're doing genomics on your daughters and stuff as well.
The other point is that, I'm going to keep that bull and use him with my heifers, and I haven't registered him and haven't done the profile, and oops, he fell over and died in the drain. Too late.
Do them as calves.
Yes, you do them as calves. That was my point. The earlier they're done, that everything's done in kosher. You don't have a mistake or a bull that's the progeny not being able to be registered.
That's similar to ET animals. To remember to take a DNA punch from the donor dam.
Yes.
Because this happens an unbelievably large amount of times where people do ET work, they get these oocytes, they end up having calves, and then they're like, oh, I want to register the calf. Cool. DNA the calf, but we can't match it to a dam. And if we can't match it to a dam, then we can't register it. I think it's important to know if you're importing embryos out of like America or Canada or anything like that, they are normally tested over there. So you can DNA match using Elevate through some CMEX or ST Genetics or Worldwide Size even, because they are available over there for you to match to, but they're not going to be necessarily in the GMARC profile section here. Most of the bulls are, but if you can't match the dam, then you need to be able to send that sample somewhere. So it's always important. I tell people that when you've got ABS or Vitelli or whoever it is that's come out to do your flushing, the animal's in a crush. Do you know how easy it is to just walk up and take an ear punch?
And the safe bet is to take 2.
Yes. Take 2, send them away straight away and get a profile done on her. Make sure that you've got DNA and that she's DNA matched so that there's data for you to actually compare your progeny to in the future. Because I'm sorry, but we can't DNA a dead cow. I know there are some people out there that cut off the ears when they die and put them in the freezer.
Yes. It's old school.
Yep. And then when they get time, they'll go and get a DNA punch out of this ear and then they'll send that away. And it's a lot less invasive and weird in your freezer for your wife or partner when she opens it to find DNA tubes when you used to freeze those rather than an entire ear.
It's not the first one I've seen cut off the ear when they've had died of bloat or something. Well, I need DNA off that cow. Whip a ear off, put it in the freezer. Take a sample, especially if you haven't got a sample on hand. That's the easiest way of saving it.
Yeah, it is. But that's why it's just easier to make sure that if you are doing ET work, just DNA them when you do the flush. It's the easiest thing.
Definitely.
And it causes a lot less strife. And making sure that you record that your ET animals have a recipient dam as well. So making sure that the embryo implantation and everything is recorded correctly in Minder, because otherwise if there's no recipient dam, then it can't be registered either, because it should be an ET and it's saying that we're saying that it's an overseas dam, but she was born here in New Zealand and that doesn't add up. So making sure that adds up too. But anything like that, you can always just contact our office or myself, or even just your local board directors in your area should be able to explain all these questions. If you're in Northland, you can always just ring Alex.
Oh, thanks.
Alex has always got time to talk, not. What haven't we covered?
Not a lot, I don't think.
We've answered all the questions.
We have. And going back to our background, I'll finish on this one. In our cupboard over there, I've got herd testing records that go back to the 1950s in the cupboard from the original herd. So that's getting back there. In the old days, the herd tester used to rock up with a big centrifuge and take the fat samples and put them in those things and spin it up with a hand winder drill to spin the fat and the acid out. Then they'd read the fat test and the samples and write it down. So I'm showing my age, and on that point, I will leave you.
No, I like random facts like that, Alex. That's actually really interesting to know. I think there's a lot of our listeners out there that possibly wouldn't even know that. So great to get your little bits of history knowledge to us as well, Alex.
Not a problem.
I think we've pretty much pulled registration apart tonight, which is great. So I think we can leave it there and Alex can go and have his dinner. I know you walked straight in from milking to help with this, so I think you've deserved a cold drink, and I'm sure Nada's got dinner waiting for you.
Yeah, I hope so.
So just thanks, Alex, for your time this evening to talk about registration and sharing your reasons on why you register and the history behind it, which I thought was really interesting today. So I really appreciated that. If anyone is interested in doing registrations or learning a bit more about registrations, please don't hesitate to get in contact with me or our office in general. This is what we're here for. We do this for you. We can talk to you about standing order to make sure it happens every year, and we can talk to you about the differences and everything like that. If there's anything that we've said today that isn't clear for you and that you want more information about, please contact us. That's why we're here. That's the point of breed societies. As I said before, we didn't really cover any of the other breed societies, but the generalized behind what we're discussing today is the same regardless of what colored cow you breed. The statuses might be slightly different to F12 to A12, or something might sit differently with the supplementary being S2A or whatever. But the reason why you do it and the benefits that you get out of registering are all the same. Doesn't matter what color it is. The breed societies are here to register for you guys and support you. And I know that Jersey New Zealand is more than happy to answer these questions about the Ayrshires and the Jerseys as well. As I said, if you have any questions about today's topic or any other topics you would like us to talk about, you can get in contact with us through our website, Facebook or Instagram, which is all linked in our show notes. So thank you for listening. I will be back next month with a new guest and a new topic. Until then, happy farming and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, guys, because this is December. So, yay. But yeah, happy farming. Bye.
Bye.